I still remember the smell of fresh paint and desperation when I first walked into what would become Zenith & Corp Strategic Solutions 12 years ago. Robert Westfield had just leased the third floor of a converted warehouse in downtown Seattle, and the whole operation consisted of him, his assistant Diana, and exactly 3 clients, one of whom was his brother-in-law's plumbing company. "Marcus," Robert had said, gesturing around the empty space with the confidence of a man who had never doubted himself, "I need someone who can build something from nothing. Someone who understands that relationships are everything in this business." I was 31 then, hungry and tired of being overlooked at my previous firm, where I'd spent 5 years watching lesser talents get promoted over me. Robert offered me a base salary that was barely livable and a commission structure that seemed almost mythical in its generosity. More importantly, he offered me something I'd never had before, the chance to build something from the ground up. "Give me 2 years," I told him during that first interview, sitting across from him at a folding table that served as his desk. "If I don't triple your client base in 24 months, fire me." He laughed, that genuine, booming laugh I'd come to associate with the Robert I thought I knew. "You remind me of myself at your age. Deal." I didn't just triple the client base. By the end of year 2, I'd brought in 17 new accounts worth $3.2 million in annual revenue. I'd hired and trained 6 new employees. I'd personally designed our client onboarding process, our retention strategies, and our internal communication systems. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was the architect of everything that worked at Zenith Corp. The years that followed were a blur of 12-hour days, weekend client dinners, and the intoxicating rush of watching something you've built with your own hands grow into something extraordinary. I landed Sterling Financial when everyone said we were too small. I convinced Blackstone Industries to switch from their agency of 15 years because I'd spent 8 months learning everything about their business model and 3 months crafting a presentation that addressed problems they didn't even know they had. By year 5, I'd built relationships with 43 major clients, accounting for nearly 70% of Zenith Corp's revenue. Robert had moved us to a gleaming office tower downtown, hired 37 employees, and started talking about our legacy. I'd been promoted to Senior Vice President of Client Relations, and my annual bonus had reached 6 figures. More importantly, I'd built a team. Elena Rodriguez, who I'd hired as a junior account coordinator and mentored into our head of operations. David Chen, who joined us straight out of college and was now one of the best strategic consultants on the West Coast. Isabella Santos, who'd been struggling as a single mother when I convinced Robert to give her a chance in our finance department. These weren't just employees. They were people whose careers I'd helped shape, whose successes felt as important to me as my own. "You know what I love about you, Marcus," Robert had said during my 10-year anniversary dinner, the wine making him more sentimental than usual. "You care about this place like it's your own company. That's rare." I should have paid more attention to how he phrased that. Tyler Westfield was 26 years old and had never held a job for longer than 8 months. I knew this because Robert had asked me to review his resume when Tyler first expressed interest in exploring opportunities in strategic consulting. The resume was a masterpiece of creative writing, internships at family friends' companies, vague descriptions of business development initiatives, and a degree from a private college I'd never heard of. "He's got potential," Robert had said during our private meeting in January. "Just needs the right mentor. Someone who can show him the ropes." I'd agreed to meet with Tyler, assuming Robert wanted me to evaluate whether he might be a fit for an entry-level position. Maybe I could shape him into something useful, the way I'd done with so many others. The interview was a disaster. Tyler arrived 20 minutes late, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most of our junior employees made in a month. He had his uncle's height and confidence, but none of his substance. Within the first 5 minutes, he'd interrupted me twice and mansplained our own client retention strategy back to me, incorrectly. "The thing is," Tyler said, leaning back in his chair like he was doing me a favor by being there, "I think you guys are thinking too small. Like, why are you focusing on these mid-tier clients when you could be going after the real players? Zenith Corp, Pinnacle Tech, Quantum Motors. That's where the money is." I explained that we'd actually pitched to Zenith Corp the previous year, and that our current client base was built on relationships that took years to develop. Tyler nodded impatiently, clearly waiting for me to finish so he could continue talking. "Right, but that's the old way of doing business," he said. "My generation understands social media, influencer marketing, viral strategies. You need someone who can modernize this place." After he left, I called Robert immediately. "He's not ready," I said bluntly. "Maybe in a few years, with the right training and a significant attitude adjustment. But right now, he'd be a liability." The call came on a Thursday morning in September. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Diana's voice crackled through the intercom. "Marcus? Robert needs to see you in his office." It wasn't unusual. Robert and I met several times a week to discuss strategy, review client feedback, and plan for the future. I grabbed my coffee and the Nexus contract renewal documents I'd been preparing. Robert's office had always felt like a sanctuary to me. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, shelves lined with industry awards, and photos of successful campaigns. The Persian rug, where we'd celebrated countless victories. Today, something felt different. Robert was sitting behind his desk instead of in one of the comfortable chairs where we usually talked. His expression was carefully neutral. "Sit down, Marcus." I sat, suddenly aware that my pulse had quickened. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about the future of this company," Robert began, his hands folded on the desk between us, "about what we need to do to stay competitive in a changing market." "Okay," I said slowly. "Are we talking about expanding into new sectors? I've been working on some proposals for—" "I'm making some leadership changes," he interrupted. "Effective immediately, Tyler will be taking over as Senior Vice President of Client Relations." The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I couldn't process what he'd said. Then the implications started cascading through my mind. My position, my clients, the team I'd built, the company I'd helped create. "I don't understand," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "You've done incredible work here, Marcus. No one disputes that. But we need fresh energy, new perspectives. Tyler has some innovative ideas about how to take our client relationships to the next level." "Robert, Tyler doesn't know our clients. He's never managed an account. He's been here for 8 months. Which is exactly why he's perfect for this role. He's not stuck in old patterns. He can see opportunities we might be missing." I felt something cold settling in my chest. "What happens to me?" "You'll be transitioning to a senior advisor role, still part of the team, still valuable to the company, but with more flexibility to focus on strategic initiatives." Senior advisor. It was corporate speak for, "We're keeping you around until we figure out how to get rid of you." I'd seen this movie before at other companies. The senior advisor role was where careers went to die. "The Nexus contract," I said. "I'm in the middle of negotiations for their renewal." "Tyler will be taking over that relationship. It'll be good for him to cut his teeth on something significant." "Robert, that contract is worth nearly $5 million. Tyler has never—" "The decision is made, Marcus." His voice had an edge now, the tone he used with employees who weren't family. "I need you to spend the next 2 weeks transitioning your accounts to Tyler. Full client files, contact information, relationship histories, everything." I stared at him for a long moment. This man I'd worked beside for 12 years, whose company I'd helped build from nothing into something extraordinary. I'd missed my nephew's graduation for a client dinner Robert deemed critical. I'd worked through my father's funeral because Robert said we couldn't afford to lose momentum on the Morrison deal. I'd given him everything. "Can I ask why?" I said, finally. Robert's expression softened slightly, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the man who'd hired me all those years ago. "You've been here a long time, Marcus, maybe too long. Sometimes fresh blood is exactly what an organization needs to reach the next level." Fresh blood. That's what 12 years of loyalty and success had earned me. I was old blood now, apparently, stagnant, replaceable. "I understand," I said, standing up. It was a lie, but it was the only thing I could say that wouldn't make this worse. "I hope you do. I really hope you understand that this isn't personal. It's just business." As I walked back to my office, my former office, Robert's words echoed in my head. Just business. Funny how the people who say that are never the ones getting screwed. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my professional life. I had to sit in meeting after meeting, watching Tyler fumble through client presentations I'd spent months preparing. I had to smile and nod as Robert introduced him to my clients as the new face of Zenith & Corp's strategic vision. I had to pretend it didn't make me physically ill to watch Tyler butcher the Nexus relationship I'd spent over a year building. The worst part wasn't Tyler's incompetence, though that was spectacular. It was watching him treat my life's work like his personal playground. "I think we need to completely rebrand our approach to B2B partnerships," Tyler announced during a client strategy meeting, using buzzwords he'd clearly memorized from a LinkedIn article. "We're going to pivot toward a more agile, synergistic framework." I watched David Chen's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and barely contained frustration. Elena Rodriguez actually left the room halfway through one of Tyler's presentations about leveraging millennial insights to optimize client engagement. Even Diana, Robert's assistant of 15 years, started looking at me with a mixture of pity and bewilderment. The clients noticed too. Frank Morrison from Caldwell Industries called me directly after his first meeting with Tyler. "Marcus, what the hell is going on over there? This kid spent 40 minutes explaining why our current strategy is outdated, then pitched me ideas we tried and abandoned 3 years ago. Is this some kind of joke?" "Tyler is still learning our processes," I said diplomatically. "I'm sure once he gets up to speed." He told me that email marketing is dead, and we should be focusing on social media influencers. "Marcus, we're an industrial manufacturing company. Our target demographic is 55-year-old plant managers, not teenagers." These conversations were happening daily. Clients were confused, frustrated, and starting to question whether Zenith & Corp was the right fit for their needs. I found myself doing damage control from my senior advisor position, making calls and sending emails to reassure clients that their projects were still in good hands. But the damage was spreading faster than I could contain it. The breaking point came during Tyler's first major presentation to the Nexus Global Board. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Robert had asked me to provide backup in case Tyler needed support. What I witnessed was a masterclass in how to destroy a multi-million-dollar relationship in 45 minutes. Tyler opened with a PowerPoint presentation that looked like it had been designed by a high school student. Comic Sans font, clip art graphics, bullet points that contradicted our actual strategy for Nexus. He spent 20 minutes explaining why their current marketing approach was totally cringe and proposed a complete overhaul based on growth hacking methodologies he'd learned from a podcast. Catherine Walsh, Nexus's CEO, sat stone-faced through the entire presentation. When Tyler finished with a flourish, "So, yeah, I think we can totally revolutionize your brand and make it go viral," the silence in the room was deafening. "Mr. Westfield," Catherine said finally, her voice carefully controlled, "I'm not sure this is the direction Nexus wants to pursue." "Trust me," Tyler replied, with a confidence that would have been admirable if it weren't so misplaced. "Once you see the results, you'll never want to go back to the old way of doing things." Catherine's eyes found mine across the room. We'd worked together for over a year. She'd trusted me with her company's most sensitive strategic initiatives. Now she was watching that relationship get torpedoed by someone who thought synergy was a magic word that could substitute for actual competence. After the meeting, Catherine pulled me aside in the hallway. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Is this really the direction Zenithan Corp is going?" I looked at this woman who'd become not just a client, but a professional colleague I respected immensely. Someone who'd trusted me with her company's future. Someone who deserved better than corporate doublespeak. "I don't know," I said, and it was the truth. She nodded slowly. "I see. Well, I think Nexus needs to reassess our partnership with Zenithon Corp." I watched her walk away, and I knew I'd just witnessed the beginning of the end of everything I'd built. That night, I sat in my home office staring at a bottle of whiskey and trying to make sense of what my life had become. I'd spent 12 years building something extraordinary, only to watch it get handed over to someone who treated it like a game. I'd mentored dozens of employees, cultivated relationships with some of the most successful companies in the country, and created strategies that had generated tens of millions in revenue. And for what? To be shuffled into a meaningless advisory role while someone else took credit for my work? My wife Laura found me there at midnight, still staring at the unopened bottle. "Rough day?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. I told her everything. About Tyler's presentation disaster, about Catherine's obvious frustration, about the growing exodus of clients who were losing faith in Zenithon Corp's direction, about the sick feeling in my stomach every morning when I walked into an office that no longer felt like home. "So what are you going to do?" Laura asked when I finished. "I don't know. Part of me wants to fight this, to try to convince Robert that he's making a mistake. But another part of me just wants to walk away." "Those aren't your only options." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Marcus, you've spent 12 years building relationships with these clients. You understand their businesses better than anyone. You've trained half the staff at Zenithan Corp and created most of their successful strategies. Why are you acting like Robert owns all of that?" Because he does. I signed a non-compete agreement. That prevents you from working for a direct competitor. It doesn't prevent you from starting your own company. The idea hit me like a revelation. Start my own company. Take everything I'd learned, all the relationships I'd built, all the expertise I'd developed, and create something new, something better. The clients know you, Laura continued. They trust you. If Robert wants to replace you with his nephew, let him. But that doesn't mean you have to disappear. By 3 a.m., I had the outline of a business plan. By the end of the week, I'd filed papers to incorporate Sterling Strategic Solutions. Starting a business from scratch at 43 was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I'd been part of Robert's startup 12 years earlier, but this was different. This time, every decision was mine. Every risk was mine. Every potential reward was mine. I set up my first office in the spare bedroom of our house, surrounded by boxes of files I'd legally accumulated over the years. Industry research, strategic frameworks I'd developed, and contact information for the thousands of professional relationships I'd built. I couldn't take Zenith & Corp's client files, but I could take my own network. The first call I made was to Elena Rodriguez. Marcus, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. How are you holding up? Actually, I'm doing great. I'm starting my own consultancy, and I was hoping we could grab coffee. The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. Elena, I'm here. Wow, your own consultancy? Sterling Strategic Solutions. I filed the paperwork last week. Marcus, that's incredible. When can we meet? We met the next day at a coffee shop downtown, and within an hour, I'd offered Elena a position as my director of operations. By the end of the week, David Chen had agreed to join as senior strategic consultant. Isabella Santos was interested, but wanted to wait a few months to see how things developed. The early days were a blur of 18-hour workdays, learning business management software, and making hundreds of calls to former colleagues and industry contacts. I wasn't trying to poach Zenith & Corp's clients. That would have been unethical and potentially illegal. Instead, I was simply letting people know that I was available if they needed strategic consulting services. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Frank Morrison from Caldwell Industries was my first client. Marcus, thank God you called. We've been having some serious issues with Zenith & Corp since you left. That nephew of Robert's, let's just say he's not working out. I'm sorry to hear that, Frank. What kind of support are you looking for? Honestly, we're thinking about ending our contract with Zenithon Corporation, but we still need strategic consulting. Would you be interested in taking us on? Within 2 weeks, I had 5 former Zenith & Corp clients who'd made the same decision. By month 3, Sterling Strategic Solutions had 12 clients and $1.8 million in contracted revenue. I'd moved out of my spare bedroom into a small office downtown. Nothing fancy, but professional and functional. Elena had proven to be an exceptional operations director, and David was developing innovative strategies that were getting noticed throughout the industry. The success felt surreal. I'd gone from watching my life's work get dismantled to building something even better in less than 6 months. But the real validation came from the clients themselves. Catherine Walsh from Nexus Global called me in November. Marcus, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For showing us what real strategic consulting looks like. We ended our contract with Zenith & Corp last month. I'd heard rumors about Nexus leaving, but hearing it confirmed was still shocking. That was a $4.7 million annual contract, the biggest deal in Zenithan Corp's history. "I'm sorry it didn't work out," I said carefully. "Don't be. Working with Tyler was a nightmare. He spent 3 months trying to convince us to rebrand Nexus as Nexus because it would be more millennial-friendly. When we politely declined, he suggested we change our entire business model to focus on cryptocurrency." I couldn't help but laugh. Cryptocurrency. He said traditional software development was totally dead, and that we should pivot to creating digital collectibles. "Marcus, we're a B2B software company with enterprise clients. We provide inventory management solutions to Fortune 500 manufacturers." That's quite a pivot. The final straw was when he showed up to our quarterly review meeting an hour late, because he'd been at a networking brunch that was apparently more important than our $4.7 million contract. "Catherine, I really appreciate you telling me this, but I have to ask, why are you calling?" "Because I'd like to hire Sterling Strategic Solutions if you're taking on new clients." I was quiet for a moment, processing what she'd just said. Nexus Global had been my greatest achievement at Zenithon Corp. Landing them again would be the ultimate validation of everything I'd built. "I'd be honored to work with Nexus again," I said finally. By the end of November, Sterling Strategic Solutions represented 15 former Zenithon Corp clients. The call came on a Tuesday morning in February. Diana, Robert's longtime assistant, was on the line. "Marcus, I hope it's okay that I'm calling you." "Of course, Diana. How are you?" I'm looking for a new job, actually. Robert had to let me go last week." I felt a pang of sympathy. Diana had been with Zenithon Corp since the beginning, and she'd always been nothing but professional and kind. "I'm sorry to hear that. What happened?" "The company's in trouble, Marcus. Real trouble. We've lost so many clients that Robert can't make payroll. He's been trying to keep it together. But Tyler?" She paused. "Tyler isn't helping." "What do you mean?" "Last week, Tyler called a meeting with the remaining clients to discuss rebranding our relationship paradigm. He showed up in a tracksuit and spent an hour explaining why everyone needed to embrace the hustle mentality. 2 more clients terminated their contracts that afternoon." I closed my eyes. Despite everything Robert had put me through, I didn't want to see Zenithon Corp fail completely. Too many good people still worked there. "How bad is it?" "They're down to 8 clients. Robert's been trying to get meetings with potential investors. But word is getting around about Tyler's management style. Nobody wants to invest in a company where the VP of Client Relations thinks PowerPoint presentations should include memes." "Memes?" "Last month, Tyler presented our quarterly results to the board, using nothing but reaction GIFs. Robert had to leave the room. Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but be amazed by Tyler's ability to find new ways to be professionally inappropriate. 2 weeks later, Diana joined Sterling Strategic Solutions, bringing with her 15 years of institutional knowledge and a work ethic that made my company run even more smoothly. She also brought stories that helped me understand just how completely Zenithon Corp was falling apart. According to Diana, Tyler had spent the previous month implementing what he called disruptive innovation strategies. This included redecorating the office with beanbag chairs and neon signs, instituting mandatory creativity sessions where employees had to share their personal brands, and replacing all internal communications with Slack messages written entirely in emoji. The final blow came when Tyler decided to host a client appreciation event at a Dave & Buster's arcade. The news reached me through multiple channels on the same day in March. Zenith & Corp Strategic Solutions was closing its doors. Robert had filed for bankruptcy, and the remaining employees were being laid off immediately. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that my former colleagues would finally be free from Tyler's incompetent leadership. Sadness that something I'd helped build was ending this way. And if I'm being honest, a certain satisfaction that Robert's decision to replace me with his nephew had led to such a predictable outcome. 2 days later, Robert called me directly. "Marcus, I hope you don't mind me reaching out." "Not at all, Robert. I heard about Zenith Corporation. I'm sorry it ended that way." There was a long pause. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "I should have listened to you about Tyler. I should have trusted your judgment instead of letting family loyalty cloud my business judgment." "Robert, no, let me finish. You built something special at Zenith Corporation. I took it for granted, and I'm paying the price for that now. I just wanted you to know that I recognize what I lost when I chose Tyler over you." It was the apology I'd been waiting for, but now that I had it, I realized I didn't need it anymore. I'd moved past needing Robert's validation. I'd built something better than what we'd had together. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "But honestly, Robert, I think things worked out the way they were supposed to. Zenith Corp gave me the foundation I needed to build something even better." "Sterling Strategic Solutions." "Exactly. I'm doing work I love with people I respect, and our clients are getting better results than they ever did before. In a weird way, I should probably thank you." "Thank me?" "For showing me that I was capable of more than I realized. If you hadn't forced me out, I might never have discovered what I could accomplish on my own." When I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about proving Robert wrong. It was about discovering who I was when I wasn't defined by someone else's vision of my worth. 2 years later, Sterling Strategic Solutions employs 23 people and generates $8.7 million in annual revenue. The real revenge, if you want to call it that, was building something better than what I lost.